So I was asked, what is plain hunt? And I said, do you mean like as a concept, like how it works, or how do you do it in the tower? And they said both. So in this video, I'm looking at how you actually ring it when you're in the tower on the rope, but I've made another video that tries to explain what's going on in plain hunt generally. So I'm hoping that if you're watching this, you can already ring chord changes reasonably well. And what I mean is not necessarily that you can figure out who it is to follow, but that you can make a crisp change when you're told to move, or you work out that you need to move out of the way, that you can move your hand stroke up over a bell or tuck it in really crisply from third place to second place or wherever it is, and that you're not sort of struggling to keep the rhythm of the rounds as you make those moves, because that's really important for plain hunt, because it's basically chord changes but to the max. Because what's going to happen is, instead of waiting to be told, like in chord changes, you're happily ringing the rounds up here, and then you're told, oh, 3 to treble, and the 3 then moves, and then you ring that for a while, and then you're told another change. In this case, not only are multiple people moving at once, you can see the 1 and the 2 have swapped over here at the same time that the 3 and the 4 have swapped. And the only reason the 5 hasn't swapped is just because it hasn't got anyone to swap with. If there were 6 bells, then it would swap with the 6. So not only are multiple people swapping at once, but they're swapping every single stroke. Okay, so this is your hand stroke, and then the very next back stroke, you can see that the number 1 bell, the treble, has moved up again into third place. And then a hand stroke, it's moved up again, and then the back stroke, it's moved to the back. Now, what plain hunt is this idea of moving from the front to the back and the back to the front one step at a time. So the treble is going up the staircase, second place, third place, fourth place, fifth place. Whenever you get to the front or back, you have to stay for another blow. If you insisted on coming back, then the bell that you swapped with, 3, would have to also move back to fill in that gap so you didn't crash into each other, and you would just repeat the same lead. The same row, sorry. So you just, like here, 2, 1, 4, 3, 5. If the 2 didn't do 2 blows and wanted to move back, the 1 would move back, the 4 would move back, the 3 would move back, we'd get rounds again. So you have to do 2 at the beginning and 2 at the end to let all the others switch, so that when you move off, there's someone to fill the space. Someone new to fill the space. So, the treble bell has gone from first place to second to third to fourth to fifth, another blow in fifth, and then down it comes to fourth to third to second to lead to lead. And that shape everyone is doing, they're just starting in a different place. So fourth place bell, the bell number 4 starts in fourth place, so it goes from fourth to third to second to first to lead, and then it stays for its second blow, and then it goes second, third, fourth, fifth, fifth, fourth. And if it was going to carry on, it would just go third, second, first. But yes, because this rounds at the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is the same as the rounds here. So once you've got to the end, you would just loop back and go straight to that line. It can just carry on forever. And obviously, you're repeating the same, in this case, 10 lines of music again and again. And that's fine for practice. We don't usually want to do that for a protracted period of time, or for you wouldn't do that in a quarter peal, because you don't want to repeat the same music again and again. But for practicing plain hunt, that's absolutely fine. And it's just this idea of going up and down and up and down. Now, I imagine if you're going to be doing plain hunt, you're going to start by doing it on the treble. So we're going to ignore what all the other bells are doing, because we'll assume as well that if you're learning plain hunt, then the people ringing 2, 3, 4, and 5 are reasonably experienced and they know how to ring plain hunt. So they're not going to go wrong, or at least we hope not. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to know what we're doing, and there's 2 things we need to know when we're ringing plain hunt, and a third thing that we can cheat with to help us to begin with. The first thing we need to know is, where do we need to ring? Okay, so in the rounds, that's perfectly fine, because, sorry, terrible writing, but I'm trying to write with the touchpad on the laptop, so it doesn't come out very neat. When we're in rounds, we know we're first place. Okay, and in plain hunt is literally just telling you to count up the places and down the places. So it's going to go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, fifth, fourth, third, second, first, first again. So you need to tell yourself that as you're ringing. You pull in thirds place, you're here, you pull the bell in thirds place, think to yourself, fourth next. So you go up into fourth. The second thing you need to think is how to get there. Okay? So you might tell yourself, well, I'm third place, go to fourth next. And you need to think, well, how do I do that? I need to go slower. I need to catch it slightly lower on the bell, on the rope. Let the rope rise that little bit more because I've caught it lower. So the pull should be the same, but you've caught slightly lower. So you're letting the bell go slightly further on the balance. And that's going to slow it down. It's going to take longer at the top than normal, which is giving the 5 here enough time to scooch in front of you, and then you can ring behind it. And then your fourth place, you're thinking, I am fourth. Now, where am I going? I'm going to fifth. How do I get there? Well, it's a slow again. It's slow to go up the numbers, to go out, away from the lead. You have to go slower. So again, you're going to ring a backstroke now, so you maybe let a bit of the backstroke out. I mean, you've probably already done that up here. Or maybe you have light enough bells that you don't move on the rope so much, and you're just going to stretch slightly more. It's always better to do it by rope movement if you can, so ask your teacher to show you how to move up and down on the rope to make that easier. But especially on light bells, some people do it just by the rhythm in their head and the stretch of their arms. If you can keep the rhythm that way, fair enough, but if you can't, then do it by adjusting the rope, because that's less likely to vary your rhythm. So you stretch up your backstroke. You let it take longer on the balance so the 3 can come in front of you. You're in fifth. Then you say, well, where next? Fifth again. How do I get that? Well, this fifth again means be steady. So just ring steady, round speed. Okay, and then you think, well, where next? Down to fourth. So I've got to tuck in. I've got to catch the Sally. This is the backstroke, actually. So I've got to tuck that backstroke in. I've got to pull it down sooner, not harder. If you pull down harder, you'll actually make it go slower on the next pull. Okay, but I'll come back to planning ahead in a moment. You want to pull it down sooner. Now, that might be because you've scooched up the tail end a little bit, so you can pull it and tuck it in without the bell going as high. It might be that you're not going to stretch your arms as much, but again, that's harder to be consistent if you're gauging how bent should your arms be for a quick. But if you've got enough rhythm, you might be able to cope like that if you can't move up and down the rope, which is a better system to use. Okay, then it's the hand stroke. So you're going to catch the hand stroke a little bit higher. Tuck it in, again, sooner, not harder. If you're pulling really hard to get that bell to turn around and come back, it's just going to make it even worse the next pull. But again, I'll come back to planning ahead. And you pull where next in second, so tuck it in again, that little bit sooner pull until you're in lead. And then you say, lead again. That's where I'm going next, lead again. Well, for that you need to slow down. And this is the bit that everyone really struggles with, or most people really struggle with, is when you get into lead, you've got to slow down. So if you haven't already, you need to really practice looking at the tenor when you're leading and getting that visual cue from when their hands are released on each stroke as to where to then start the pull. So that when you get to lead, until you have that built-in rhythm, you can get into lead and you can look at the tenor, lead off the tenor, and then wait, and then let that bell rise and wait and lead off the tenor, and then you can look for the person you're starting with. Now, that third cheeky thing that I said we shouldn't really use is who to follow. Now, that's what everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to know, who do I follow? My point will be that's not important, because although it makes sense to know it in if everyone's playing hunting, it's always going to be the same. In this case, the treble follows 2, 4, 5, 3, then the 2, 4, 5, 3 lead lead. So that's a nice little rhythm. 2, 4, 5, 3, 2, 4, 5, 3 lead lead. You could remember that. But as soon as you go to ring something else, like in this method, this is called union, notice this one, you're going to follow 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, and then it's not even the same coming back. It's 5 again, because this bell stays underneath you. So 5, 3, 4, 2 on the way back. And then after you've led, it's going to be different, because the bells are scooching themselves round. So are you going to learn all the different orders of numbers for union bob? And what if there's a bob chord or a single chord? And then what about Granser and plain bob and St. Simon's? You'd have to learn all the different permutations and combinations for all the different methods, and there are hundreds of them. And if you go on to higher bells, there's thousands of them. So it really is not a sensible thing to do. But having said all of that, when you're learning your very first go of plain hunt, when everyone is plain hunting, I think it is sensible, especially if you haven't learned your rope sight yet, to have that extra clue of who you're following, so that not only are you thinking first, second, third, fourth, fifth, fourth, third, second, first, but you also have an idea of where to look. But in your head, it's really important that you don't say 2, follow the 4, follow the 5, follow the 3, but in your head you're counting your place, you're doing your where, because your where tells you how to do it, and when you know where to go and how to do it, you're just using the who to follow as a help to begin with. And that when you've got that in, you're doing it by these first two when you go into ringing other methods. So these are those little hints, that third bit of knowledge that you might use when you're doing plain hunt on 3 bells, 4 bells, 5 bells, and 6 bells. Because that's probably what you're going to do. Just to get used to moving your bell, you might start on plain hunt on 3 and then build up with 4 bells, 5 bells. It might be you have a strong band around you and someone stood behind you, you just go straight from 5 because you've got quite good bell handling. But if you are building it up, then when you're ringing plain hunt on 3, you're going to be leading, go plain hunt on 3, you're going to go slow over the 2, slow over the 3, and now you're in thirds place. You were at first, now second, you're third. So you're going to go steady over the 2, quick to the 3, quick to lead, and then you're going to have to slow the bell down to stay in lead, and then slow the bell down even more to go back to second over the 2 into seconds place. On 4, it's 2, 4, 3, 2, 4, 3, lead. On 5, it's 2, 4, 5, 3, 2, 4, 5, 3, lead. You might have spotted a pattern that on any number of bells, it's always the even numbers going up, so 2, 4, 6, and then the odd numbers coming down. So you go up the evens, down the odds. If you're on 11 bells, for example, you would go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then you come down the odds, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3. Okay, so you can always work it out when it's just plain hunt, but this only works if everybody is plain hunting. Doesn't work for method, so it's only for when you're learning when to plain hunt. But once you've got it in your head, then you stick with where am I and how do I move to the next one. Okay, now I did say about planning ahead. So if you're in first place and you know you're going into second place, if you're ringing beautifully and you're pulling just the right amount, going up onto the balance, then, well, you can just hold up. Most people find holding up easy, but that's because they're over pulling, okay? So you're pulling a little bit too hard so that when you want it to rise, it has enough energy, it goes up. What people usually then do is they get to the back and then they struggle to pull the bell in quick. Because you're over pulling quite a bit, or you can be, a lot of learners are, to get that quick pull here, you have to, the bell's really trying to go up on the balance with quite a bit of force. So a lot of your effort goes into stopping that bell and pulling it back. And because you're pulling quite hard, you end up pulling the bell hard into fourth place. And then when you want it in third, it's got a lot of energy up at the top. So now you need to pull it even harder to stop it because it's got all the energy that you threw into it the last time when you came down into fourth. You just put a lot of energy into it. It's now trying to get really up. And actually, the further you come down, the heavier the bell feels as it comes down. So the trick is not to pull harder to get down, but to pull it sooner, not let it rise as high. And if you do have to use a bit of energy to stop the bell from rising and to bring it back, as soon as you've turned it around, as soon as you've stopped it going up, you need to then pull gently, okay, really quite gently. Let it drop down, maybe shape the rope, but not pull really hard because you know you want the next one to be lighter and lighter. When you're pulling in second place, you're thinking, I'm going into lead next. That's fine. You tuck into lead, but you probably need to pull that hand stroke with a little bit more. Okay, now I hesitate when I say pull it harder, because you're probably pulling hard enough as it is, but you want to make sure that if the bell's been just dropping and you're not really been pulling all this way, you just kind of like let the bell drop its way down, then you do need to pull more firmly or pull longer or do a better shape at the bottom. Something that's going to put a bit more energy into the bell, because it's wanting to go quick. And you're now going to have to do a steady. You're trying to slow it down. So you've got to think, oh, I'm pulling quick this time into lead. So this is the hand stroke whilst I'm pulling as lead. But the next one needs to be slower. So I'm going to pull it that little bit more firmly or shape it that little bit more. Give it that little oomph at the bottom so that it rises up next time, and we'll do a slower pull as a steady. And then on this backstroke, you might think to flick that backstroke a bit more and catch that sally a bit lower. Thinking ahead, I want it to be slow next time. I'm pulling a steady now, but next time it needs to be slow, so I need to give it that little bit of convincing to get up next time. So you've got to plan ahead with what you're doing. This will come into method ringing later on as well, when there's dodges going everywhere, that you've got to think, well, I'm going to do this bit next, so I better pull it in this way for that next pull. There's a lot going on here, which is why I often suggest people build it up from those steps, those earlier ones of doing plain hunt on 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. Build it up in smaller steps. So here you're learning to move your bell every time. Hand stroke, backstroke. You're doing quicks and then steadies and then slows and then steadies, and then building it up relatively soon. As soon as you can get the shape of that. And I think the key thing here is coming from those quick pulls. So quick into third, quick into lead, slowing down that lead, and then get back up over the 2. Once you can do that, start building in more bells. And in a way, it's almost easier on more bells, okay, because until you add more bells to the rhythm. So assuming you're doing plain hunt on 3, but there's 3 tenor behinds, so that the rhythm is still of 6 bells, then it gets slightly easier, because here you're doing 4 slow pulls, whereas here you just do 1 slow, 2nd slow, and then that one's steady, and then you go 2 quick bells there. So that one was slow and that one was quick, and then you got steady. It's not very much time, whereas here you've got 4 pulls of slow, so you can get into the rhythm. So all of those slow pulls are going to be the same, then a steady, and then all 4 of these are going to be the same amount of quick into lead. So once you've got that ability to turn around and lead, then you'll probably find it easier to do plain hunt on 5. And as soon as you can do it by counting where you are, then abandon the numbers, abandon the 2, 4, 5, 3. You've got to then ask to treble to methods where it changes every time to force you to look at the ringers and train your rope sight. And if you can't see it, then don't worry. Let your arms guide you. If your arms know how much to stretch up for a slow and how much to tuck in for a quick, and that rhythm is in your soul, then stick to that. I mean, in theory, if you're confident enough to shut your eyes and you could listen and get the rhythm from the sound, you could still do those slows and those quicks. You don't need to see which bell. If you're in third, it doesn't matter who's in first and second, and if they're wrong, that's their problem, not yours. If you're supposed to be in third and you're the third bell that strikes evenly, well, then that's great. That's exactly what you need. So please don't worry about the who to follow. Yes, it's helpful to know when you're learning to plain hunt until you can really concentrate on the where and the how. So as I'm ringing it, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got the rhythm, so I can check if I'm saying I'm third, 1, 2, 3, and I heard my bell nicely. Maybe you're not at the stage of listening and counting like that, in which case you're probably going to be doing it by rope sight, but still you need to be thinking, where am I? I'm first, going into second. Tell yourself, as soon as you've pulled that hand stroke in second, tell yourself, well, third next. So you'll be looking around for who can I follow? I need to be third, then you'd be 2 bells I can follow. Okay? With a lot of these methods, you're not going to see the same person, not always true, but you're not going to see the same person twice. If you're ringing plain bob, grants, things like that, it can be the same order coming back, but even if it's not the same order coming back, you're not going to meet the same bell until you've met all of them. So here we ring over the 2, and then we don't meet the 2 again until we've seen all 3 of the other bells. Then the 2 comes back. So if you have gone over the 2, you then don't need to look at that. There's only 3 bells to choose from. And then once you've seen one of those, there's 2 bells left and there's only one after that. So you can kind of work out who it is as you go. There's a lot of information there, a lot of different things to try, and build it up in little stages would be my advice. If I've confused anything, if I've got anything wrong, if there's anything I haven't answered that you still have questions about, then put it all down in the comments, and I can either comment on your comment or I can do a video explaining the bit that I missed out. I'm sorry this one's quite a long one, but hopefully that explains how to think about plain hunt.